Behavior has sparked many discussions in the community about the recent attempts to resolve camping, tunneling, and slugging. What can we do to fix it? Can it be fixed? Does it need to be fixed? Seto has an interesting idea, yet I very much disagree with the take. His idea is to make 6 perks base kit, 3 for survivor and 3 for killer. Mind you, he wants the full power of all of these perks, which some of these perks are very much balanced by the very fact that they take up a perk slot, if they are balanced at all. He wants camaraderie, off the record, and unbreakable for survivor, and pop goes the weasel, barbecue and chili, and no way out for killer. I agree with 2 perk choices, if any of them were to be made base kit without change. As to re-clarify, he would not nerf these in any way. Aside from these 2, the rest I think have quite a few issues. Starting off with the perks that I very much disagree with, from survivor to killer, off the record. When I first started recording this, I was far harsher on this perk than I should have been. However, this perk should not be base kit in its current state. My biggest gripe is the endurance. 40 seconds, formerly 80 as of before this patch, is far too long a time to have for an endurance effect. As a perk, it is fine and balanced as it takes up one of the 4 perk slots. You are sacrificing a perk slot in order to have this effect. If it were base kit, this would be far too oppressive. Survivors would use this mechanic aggressively, as they are now, and force body blocks rather than avoiding being tunneled. The current endurance effect that we have now, accompanied by the haste, is a good perfect length. It is enough time to get them to a loop, protect themselves from the killer, but not long enough to abuse it. As if they try to abuse it, they try to body block for the unhooker, they will get punished, which is fair if they are trying to abuse it this way. The stealth aspect, however, is very much fine. There is not really many ways to abuse it, if there's a way to abuse it at all. Nothing that I can come up with at the top of my head. It just helps you avoid the killer, which, if you're being unhooked, is fine for the game to try to protect you from being found by the killer. It does not, however, stop you from making mistakes, unlike the endurance. So I think the stealth aspect should be base kit, but the endurance, no, that should not be base kit. Unbreakable. This perk is a strong perk with a strong effect. It doesn't get used in every game, but the times that it does get used, it can change the course of a game drastically and destroy a killer's chance to ever win, especially against certain killers that have to slug for the power, such as Oni or twins. Being slugged on the ground is sometimes a requirement of a killer in certain circumstances. Often referenced is being pallet harassed by survivors while a survivor's under a pallet, sabo squads, and the like. This isn't always enough time for Unbreakable to proc, though the more interesting time of trying to figure out when you have an Unbreakable is a time when a survivor is left slugged so that they can gain pressure in other ways, such as harassing the survivor off of gens, or just generally ceasing the game's progression in general. Slugging is a way to waste 2 survivors' times while saving yourself the time that it takes to hook. You're wasting the time of the one that heals them and the one that is on the ground being healed, if a survivor does go to heal them, that is. And this is a skillful play, especially if you deduce that they do not have Unbreakable. If you have Unbreakable base kit, the choice is usually to pick up the survivor no matter what, when you get the chance. This is an uninteresting choice. Not hooking the survivor was already a trade-off for leaving them slugged by leaving a hook state on the table. And now the trade-off is wasting one survivor's time, the one that you hooked, that you spent time to chase down and down. This choice will always be the wrong one. You will have to pick them up. Now imagine this perk not taking up but no slots. The one thing that made people not always run it was the fact that there are other perks that get used consistently, though to a lesser effect that Unbreakable had. Even if it's one time for one survivor, it is one time for 4 different survivors. And these survivors will go in expecting this perk now. This will make the game harder and harsher for Killer. Because while the Killer knows that there will always be an Unbreakable, survivors can now play knowing that every survivor will have this. So they can bring perks to accommodate for this. They can play around pallets to accommodate for this, and force the Killer not to pick them up. This perk is very abusable in Swifts. And this is as a perk. This isn't even as a not perk, as base kit. They will have to depower this in some way. I don't think this would be healthy at all. It's already a strong perk as a perk taking one of the 4 slots. I do not and vehemently am against this becoming base kit unless they have a way to depower it. If there's requirements for you to get Unbreakable, it's an insane perk. This should not become base kit. Barbecue and chili. This perk suffers a great bias in the Killer roster. High tiers like Nurse, Blight, and Kaneki all benefit vastly with this change and adds an extra oppressiveness on their already oppressive nature. This perk in their arsenal, along with their 4 other perks, is disastrous. While low tiers like Trapper, Trickster, and Ghostface, they all do not reap as much reward. Trap killers like Trapper and Hag often don't get the benefit at all, as they have to maintain their web, they have to set up their web, they have to stay in their web, so they will not be able to go and chase those other survivors. They have to stay in their web. Pursuers like Nemesis and Trickster, and ambushers like Ghostface and Pig, they often get more value out of it, but they don't get the same value that high tiers get. The upside, though, is that the Oniro and the Nightmare and other teleport killers, though while they're low tier, they do get the benefit as they can go over to the other survivors. Though the high tiers just make this game go burr. Pop Goes the Weasel. Similarly, this perk also suffers from killer bias as well. Some killers will never be able to get the kick a gen in time, as they have to focus elsewhere. Traps marking the victims, and sometimes the gens will just pop before they even get the chance to kill it. Meanwhile, hyper-mobile characters again benefit greatly from these changes. Now, the 2 perks that I agree with base kit. Camaraderie. This perk is very much a healthy and fine perk. This effect comes in later in the game at the struggle phase. It is a strong effect to lengthen the hook state, but by this point the killer has already gotten a hook state on the survivor, and if they are camping, they are attempting to circumvent having to hook again. By forcing them out of the game, or to fast track it down on the hooker right then and there. Many killers can put you in tough situations of letting your teammate die or letting you eat a hook state. Maybe both. Camaraderie lets you extend the hook if you get close enough, eating the time of the survivor to get close enough to the hook so that they can later coordinate and escape, so that they can punish the circumvention of needing to hook again. Additionally, this perk doesn't really work in solo queue at all, as it requires communicating with the team that you have it, which can make all the difference in a perk's playability. If it comes Space Kit, you won't need the communication, as it becomes a thing that you can do, that you know you can do, that everyone can do. No Way Out. This is a fine game extender. I've always viewed the end game as a bit shorter than it should be anyways, and the exit gates are always just open in a blink, in a snap. Whether you're playing Survivor, whether you're playing Killer, it's just never that long. And this is such an interesting time in the match. It's the final home stretch. This also just incentivizes the killer to hook multiple survivors. So it's also just a positive for spreading out hooks in general. And just the end game is longer the better the killer performs, which I think is fine. I have no complaints with this ever becoming base kit. If this becomes base kit, I'll be happy. I think it's fine. It's really fine. Now, what do I think is Seto's solution to camping, tunneling, slugging, and the like? Well, despite me agreeing with two of the perk choices, No Way Out and Camaraderie, and to a lesser extent off the record, I don't think this will exactly solve the issue. I think it will alleviate it, but not solve it. Really, I think there's another issue we should really be looking at more than this issue. As that issue is actually stopping this from being solved. And that I think the killer disparity from the high tiers and the low tiers is too insane not to look at before we look at anything else. Making perks base kit will not solve anything while this disparity exists. If you try to make a sweeping change to Survivor, these high tiers ignore the rules. So while they're ignoring the rules, anyone who adheres to the rules, typically low tiers, some mid tiers, they all get fucked by changes. But the high tiers, it doesn't change anything for them. Killer perks are also problematic in that when you add a killer perk and it does a sweeping change to killers, it often exponentially benefits the high tiers compared to the low tiers if you do not design them in mind. No Way Out even benefits the high tiers more than low tiers since they have more ability to extend the game. But I am willing for that to be base kit because that is based on a killer's performance in a game. And I think the end game needs to be longer anyways. Regardless, let me know if you disagree with any of this. This is my initial take on what Seto has said, but I am more than willing to listen to whatever arguments. I am not universally complaining. I understand that this should be a issue that is brought up, but I think solving it is not on the table while this disparity exists. I will always advocate for the disparity to be alleviated in some way. Anyways, I hope you have a good night. Don't die, have fun.
I'm ready to rumble.